In Panama, General Secretary of the National Union of Construction and Allied Workers, Suntracs, confirmed that the protests and strike actions will continue against the contract with the Canadian mining company. In Palestine, amid a humanitarian ceasefire, the Israeli regime attacked the Tulkarem refugee camp, killing at least 5 people. And in China, President Xi Jinping met with Russian State Duma Chairman Vyacheslav Volodin as both nations continue to strengthen ties. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Panama, popular demonstrations in rejection of the mining contract have the Canadian company First Quantum on the ropes, which on Tuesday called for dialogue. The company, on the verge of halting production due to the blockades that prevent the flow of vital material, also confirmed that it canceled a payment of $567 million to the Panamanian state. This payment, according to the mining company, covers a period between December 21, 2021 and October 2023. The information does not mention what President Laurentino Cortizo stated a week ago when he affirmed in a message to the nation that the payment is in a restricted account of the National Bank. The People United for Life Alliance responded to the calls from the mining company.
What we are demanding is the repeal of a law by another law, and it is perfectly constitutional and perfectly legal, but everything is aiming at the imposition of the economic power that controls the political power and for which they have imposed, as we all know, that the way out be through the unconstitutionality road. We want to warn the people that the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary are part of the problem generated here with a contract that sells our homeland.
Saul Mendes, General Secretary of the National Union of Construction and Allied Workers, Suntracs, confirmed that the actions will continue as he reaffirmed determination to fight collectively.
It would seem that everything is being done to make the ruling either constitutional, Law 406, or partially unconstitutional, which would force the people to have to face even more the situation that is occurring. We also want to repudiate the statement made by Mr. Roger Tejada, who, alluding to this note from the Attorney General, tried to tell the country that the actions carried out by the patriotic people no longer made sense and that it was necessary to begin to wash the actions. No, the actions are maintained.
Degradation of democracy in Guatemala seems unstoppable. The public ministry will search the social medias of the elected presidential binomial and other detainees for elements to commit serious criminal acts. On Tuesday, the attorney of the public ministry, Saul Sanchez, accused the former deputy candidate of the SID movement, Marcela Blanco, of violence, harassment, and disorder in social medias, as well as Bernardo Arevalo and Karim Herrera, for whom they are requesting the lifting of their immunity in order to make them accountable. The prosecution's maneuvers are aimed at preventing the elected government from assuming the presidency. The Puebla group assures that the country is living a progressive coup d'etat, while Arevalo reiterates that everything is made up.
Look, it is a request for the withdrawal of a preliminary hearing in which they say that I have made psycho-influence on the people of Guatemala since March. It is almost like accusing of witchcraft or of immobilizing the people of Guatemala. It is absurd. It has neither feet nor head. They are fabricated accusations that are going to be evidenced for what they are.
In Venezuela, a large representation of young people marched through the main streets of Caracas to celebrate the University Students' Day and to take a stand on Venezuela's sovereignty over the territory of the Guayana Esequiba. From Caracas, our correspondent Luis Guillermo Garcia with the details.
The march passed along Universidad Avenue, among other streets, to go through 8 points that reminds us of the stars of the national flag, especially the 8th star that symbolizes the territory of the Venezuelan Guyana Essequibo.
We came out here to support the consultative referendum that will take place on December 3rd for the recovery of Essequibo territory because it belongs to our country and it has always belonged to us.
We are not recovering anything because it already belongs to us and it is ours. This December 3rd, I invite all young people to vote 5 times yes for the Essequibo.
Thousands of young people marched not only to show their commitments to their university studies, but also to their commitments towards the country and its sovereignty.
First, by supporting the decisions in favor of recovering our territory and not only the Essequibo. They have wanted to take many things away from us, but we are not going to let them do it.
To demonstrate to the world and to the foreign imperialist powers that we will not need the interference from anyone to defend what belongs to us. Long live the homeland.
The march of the university students was carried out to accompany the decisions of the state regarding the territory of the Guyana Essequibo, after the consultative referendum of December the 3rd, when the march will surely continue.
Desde Caracas, Venezuela, en la Cámara de Marcos da Silva, Luis Guillermo García Bencomo, TeleSUR.
In the midst of the open dispute over the Essequibo territory, Guyana's former Minister of Natural Resources, Rafael Trotman, revealed that the U.S. oil giant ExxonMobil has paid Guyana's legal expenses for its cases against Venezuela at the International Court of Justice. As Guyana moved forward with its proceedings against Venezuela at the International Court of Justice on Friday, November 17th, Trotman admitted to Guyanese media that the government of his country had accepted funds from ExxonMobil allegedly to help protect the territorial sovereignty of the country. In this way, Trotman stated that a large sum of money granted by ExxonMobil to Guyana was destined to pay legal and associated fees for the ongoing ICJ case. For its part, Venezuela maintains its historical stance of not recognizing the ICJ's authority in the dispute over the Essequibo territory. Caracas had previously denounced the interference of the U.S. oil company as hindering the objective of mutual agreements signed at the Geneva Agreement of 1966. Cuban pneumococcal vaccine, Quimivio, is ready to obtain its health registration before the National Regulatory Authority. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel announced in a meeting with experts and scientists to update the project that this fact represents a prelude to another high-impact scientific outcome. Quimivio has been developed for more than 15 years in a joint effort of several institutions of the Ministry of Public Health and the biopharmaceutical industry. The process has completed clinical tests to evaluate over time how the vaccine affects healthy children and others with diseases of risk. An unprecedented three-day mass strike began on Tuesday in Quebec as 420,000 public employees got tired of waiting for answers to their demands for labor and salary improvements. Grouped in the collective known as the Common Front, formed by the Central Union of Quebec, the Confederation of National Unions, the Alliance of Health Personnel, and the Federation of Workers, they remain on the streets on the second day of protest. They have been trying for a year to negotiate better working conditions and wages, but the government does not listen to them. They have the lowest wages in the country, mainly depend on food banks and triple work shifts. It is a historic strike in Canada, and this Wednesday the presence of demonstrators increased. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Those stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Wednesday, the Israeli government announced a temporary humanitarian ceasefire agreement. It provided details of Palestinian prisoners who may be released. The list was published by the Ministry of Justice and includes 300 Palestinian citizens, of whom 274 are boys, mostly teenagers, between 17 and 18 years old. The list was published because Israeli laws requires that before any prisoner is released, Israelis must be informed within 24 hours if they want to appeal to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, they also communicated that the agreement also includes a 4-day ceasefire and that 300 trucks with humanitarian supplies, including fuel, will enter daily. The agreement has generated deep debates in Israel by members of the Israeli far right who are demanding the nullification of the temporary humanitarian ceasefire agreement. And at least 14 Palestinian Red Crescent ambulances have arrived at Al-Shifa Hospital, the largest in the Gaza Strip, to begin the evacuation of patients and wounded. After 2 weeks of a severe Zionist siege with an infrastructure severely damaged by bombings, the Palestinian Ministry of Health confirmed that the Red Crescent and the Organization of Doctors Without Borders have begun evacuating the wounded and patients to ensure that they can survive. The patients with renal diseases will be transferred to the Abu Yusuf al-Najjar Hospital in Rafah, and the wounded will go to the European Hospital in Khan Yunis. An estimate of about 250 patients and workers are still trapped in the building. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas welcomed the scope of a temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Secretary General of the Executive Committee of the Organization for the Liberation of Palestine, Hussein El-Sheikh, who is also spokesman for the presidency, stressed that the head of state and all national leaders welcomed the agreement. The Palestinian executive also reaffirms the need to reach a political solution based on international norms that can lead to the end of the occupation and the establishment of a sovereign and independent Palestinian state. World leaders praised on Wednesday the truce agreement reached between Israel and Hamas. On social media, President Petro described the ceasefire as a light of hope in the world. The agreement calls for a cessation of hostilities for a few hours. It is far from the ceasefire demanded by the crowds in the streets around the world, but it is a relief, not only for those released, but also for thousands of Gazans who have been without water, electricity, food, clothes, fuel, and much less medicine for 47 days. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said her country welcomes the agreement on a humanitarian pause, noting that it had been called for by Moscow since the start of the war. The diplomat highlighted the work of the government of Qatar, which led the entire process to the acceptance of the ceasefire by both sides, bringing significant humanitarian relief to Palestinians and Israelis. Meanwhile, in Palestine, official reports that at least 5 people were killed in an Israeli army drone strike on the Tulkarem refugee camp on Wednesday. During the bombardment, occupation soldiers besieged the Tabet government hospital, obstructing the passage of ambulances transporting the wounded from the attacks. The Israeli drone also bombed with 2 missiles a house in the Al-Barab neighborhood in Tulkarem, injuring at least 3 young men, while it later bombed citizens' gatherings. The Israeli military operation against the West Bank town of Tulkarem follows Israel's approval of a ceasefire agreement with the Hamas movement in the Gaza Strip. On Wednesday, authorities registered a 6.7 magnitude earthquake in Vanuatu in the province of Sanma. The U.S. Geological Survey reported that the earthquake occurred near the small town of Port Oakley in the Pacific Ocean at a depth of 10 kilometers, but it did not trigger a tsunami warning. It was confirmed that the intensity of the earthquake was widely felt in the epicenter zone, where it is suspected to have caused light to moderate damages. On Wednesday, local media in Ivory Coast highlighted how recent heavy rains have affected the country's agricultural sector. In this sense, authorities warned that due to the severity of the climatic consequences, it is estimated that the cocoa harvest will be very scarce. The Ivory Coast supplies about 40% of the world's cocoa, being the first world producer, but in 2023, farmers say that cocoa warehouses are almost empty and trucks that transport the famous bean arrive in drips and drabs. In the meantime, Siaka Sela, president of a cocoa cooperative, assured that the current cocoa season is the worst ever.
I've never seen this. I'm having the worst year. Since I've been in the cocoa business, I've never seen a year like this. But it's the rain. It was the rain that caused this because we had too much rain in the high season. When the cocoa was blooming, we had too much rain, so all the flowers were washed away. That's it. Cocoa doesn't like too much rain. It likes the rain, but not too much of it. If it rains too much, When the tree is flowering, it washes everything away. And then the campaign failed just like that.
On Wednesday, in the Netherlands, more than 9,800 polling stations opened for the more than 13.3 million citizens called to the polls to choose from among 26 parties those who will form the next coalition government. The Netherlands thus opens a new era after 13 years of consecutive legislatures of Mark Rutte's Liberal government. A total of 1,128 candidates, 36% of them women, are running in these legislative elections, which were called early after the fall of Rutte's fourth consecutive government last July, following an internal socio-political crisis. Immigration, the cost of living, and the housing crisis, which especially affects young Dutch voters, were the main issues of the campaign. No party is likely to get more than 20% of the vote, which means that long debates will be necessary to form a coalition. And Dutch voters on Wednesday share a desire for unity and stability after what they call a divisive election campaign period.
Yeah, I think it's very strange how all things developed into final, I think 3 to 4 parties that can still be the greatest party today, or become the greatest party today. And it's a bit typical for the Netherlands at this moment, I think. There's a lot of division between rich and poor, and my concern is that the gap becomes bigger and bigger. So I wish for one party to become the biggest one of the 4, but that's my personal opinion. Yeah, so.
We have now a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join us on our WhatsApp community for English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news, coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. The final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Russian State Duma Chairman Vyacheslav Volodin in Beijing on Wednesday. Xi pointed out that China and Russia have enormous common interests. Xi also expressed his interest in strengthening the exchange of legislative experience between the Russian State Duma and the Chinese National People's Congress, which is also of interest to Russia, which is ready to actively implement the consensus reached by the two leaders. Russia provides a strong legal guarantee for their strategic coordination, partnership, and contribute to the development of bilateral relations. Volodin said that under the strategic leadership of Xi and Putin, Russia-China relations have reached the best level in history. Russia destroyed 4 unmanned Ukrainian gunboats that were heading for the Crimean Peninsula on the northern coast of the Black Sea. On Wednesday, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that the 4 unmanned gunboats were detected in the western part of the Black Sea and were subsequently destroyed. No information was provided on casualties, injuries, or material damage. A virtual G20 summit began on Wednesday. Participants will discuss the main outcomes and action points of the New Delhi summit and its progress. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi chairs the meeting. The leaders of all G20 member countries, including the presidency of the African Union, as well as 9 guest nations and the heads of 11 international organizations, were invited to the event. The last G20 summit was held in September 2023 in India, which holds the presidency of the group until November 30th and will then hand it over to Brazil, which will host the meeting in November 2024. Food aid to 1.4 million refugees in Chad who fled conflict in parts of the Sahel could be cut off because of limited funding, the United Nations Food Agency warned this week. Most of the refugees fleeing the war in Sudan have crossed into Chad in the last 6 months in numbers not seen for 20 years, the UN's World Food Programme said in a statement. The WFPF's country director in Chad calls the situation a forgotten crisis and warns that life-saving operations in Chad could grind to a halt if funding for their mission isn't secured. The WFPF urgently needs $185 million to continue its support to vulnerable people in Chad over the next 6 months. In the absence of this funding, the agency is being forced to make brutal choices to prioritize certain needs and groups.
The Chadians, they have already shared whatever they could share. They can't share anymore. They even need assistance themselves. So now we need to assist all those 600,000 refugees that came, the returnees from Chad that were living there, but also now we also need to support the Chadian, the host population that are there, that are also suffering like all those Sudanese that have arrived.
A popular fireworks festival returned to Myanmar's Shan state, but crowds stayed away from the military-backed event as violent clashes spread across the country. Tuesday marked the return of the Ta Saung Dine Festival to the city of Taung Yi after a 3-year hiatus due to the coronavirus pandemic and unrest following the military seizing power in 2021. The usually riotous event sees teams load batteries of fireworks into homemade hot air balloons, with referees judging both the design of the contraptions and the magnificence of their aerial explosions. But this year's military-managed celebration was muted, with revelers staying away and a heavy presence of security personnel deployed as the junta battles coordinated attacks across the country.
There are fewer people coming this year. I'm really sorry. Many more people should be here. This festival used to be very crowded in the past. Normally this field is full of people and we can't even walk. I do not want this current situation. I want all to be peaceful and happy. I wish no one has to face situations like this.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social medias on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.